Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Ladies and gentlemen, and whatever else might be listening, welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. My name is Scott Haskin, and I am your host on this fan-based podcast that is endorsed by the actual band Uriah Heep. Thank you guys so much for listening, for sending me in feedback, for all the support that this show has been getting. It's been absolutely great and really heartwarming. It tells me that all this work that I've put into it was time well spent, because I could be doing anything with that time, right? But what I want to do with it is bring you this podcast, dive into every single Uriah Heep song and share all this great music, maybe give you some different insights. Mick has been fantastic about sending me little clips to put in the show to tell you guys stuff. And it's really been a lot of fun. You know, all the upfront work is done now. There's still a couple of networks I'm waiting for the podcast to show up on, but we're pretty set at this point. And now being a handful of episodes in, I'm really happy with the format. You guys have been writing in saying how much you love the format, how much you love mixed words, and my insight into the song. So I think this is off to a really good start. But I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to all you guys, and also thank you to Uriah Heep. Thank you to Mick Box for all the support. The manager of the band, Ace, has been great about connecting me with all the things I need to be connect with. And it's really been a group effort here. And that's what a band is. It's a group effort. So today we are here to talk about Wake Up, Set Your Sights. And there are two versions of that. There's the regular version and an alternative version, but really the only differences in the alternative version are the beginning and the mix of the song. And we're going to get into that. I'll do the whole song first, the regular studio version, and then I'll talk about the differences in the alternate version. There's some things I like and some things I don't like about that one. So that's going to be a little bit interesting to talk about. But so is this. This is also going to be interesting because it's a great song and I'm looking forward to getting into it. But first, I got to talk about my network. I have to talk about the people that talk about me because it's really important. And so I'm going to start with my graphic artist, Scott Lazinski, who did a beautiful logo for the show. And then my good friends at Audionamics, who provide a product called Instant Dialogue Cleaner, which helps me take out all the background noise. I live right next to an airport. Literally, if you walk to the front of my complex, right across the street is the airport. And that's the side where the planes land. So I get landing and takeoffs all day long. And they help me get rid of all that noise, computer fans and all that such with ease. It takes me half a second to get rid of all of that. Whereas before it was hours for each podcast. So thank you guys. Also, of course, my brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Still haven't seen any sisters yet, but maybe one day. And we're talking about Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast, The Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered, Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts with his new show, The Other Side, coming very soon. We have Uriah at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David at The Lap of the Pods. And if you want some historical fun, go to gottahear'emall.com. And you can get some details on the life and tours of Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Deep Purple. Some really cool insights and deep dives there. Not a podcast. It's all written out, but very beautifully done. And then, of course, the band's manager, Ace, has his own podcast and show on YouTube. It's called Ace on Music. You can get it on Stitcher as well as YouTube. And that comes out on Thursdays. A lot of insight, talks about Uriah Heep here and there. So you kind of get some different insights from the business side of the band, as well as Thin Lizzy and some of the other bands that he manages, and just his experiences and love for music. So it's a really great show. Make sure that you're checking that out. And of course, you can reach us and follow us on this podcast at scotthaskin.com. Just click the Uriah Heep Podcast link at the top. Then you can also go to facebook.com and /Uriah Heep Podcast. And that is where the page on Facebook is for the show. Then on Twitter, we are Heep Podcast, Instagram, Uriah Heep Podcast, and our email is UriahHeepPodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us there. You can send messages. You can ask questions. If I know the answer, I'll help you. I'm not an expert on the band. I'm really more focused on telling the story of the music itself. And so if I can help out, I certainly will. I have had a couple people ask about sheet music. There are some books that are out of print. So I would say your best bet is eBay. There are some MIDI files out there as well. If you just search for Uriah Heep MIDI, or maybe the specific song you're looking for. Of course, it's going to be the more well-known songs like Bird of Prey, Gypsy, Lady in Black, Easy Livin', that kind of thing. But there are a couple of more obscure references out there that are I say obscure, but I just mean non-mainstream songs. So those are all done just by people. They weren't done by the band. So it's kind of questionable, the quality of them. Some of them will just give you a good start. Some of them have errors in them. Some of them have great orchestration. It just depends. So it's kind of a crapshoot with MIDI files unless they were specifically licensed by a company that really did a great job with them. Same with karaoke versions. There's people that put out versions, and then there's like officially licensed karaoke versions. And sometimes those are pretty decent. But with a band like this, with so much going on in their music, it's really hard to capture the essence of what they've really done. So, give those a shot if you want to learn the song. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, Audionamics has another program that might be really good for this. It's called X-Track Stems. And what that does is it is a track separator. So it splits it out into vocals, drums, bass, and then an everything else stem. So you're going to get your guitars and keyboards are going to be in one, but it separates everything else out. So those might have a little more clarity so that you can learn the song, learn the solos, learn what's going on musically. And it's not, there's nothing that's a perfect science in this unless you have the original master tapes. There's always going to be a little bit of bleed over from one thing to another. But for the different programs that I've seen that work as separators, their X-Track Stems really works well. And you can go to audionamics.com, especially this time of year, through the holidays, they're having sales like everyone else. So go check it out. That might be a good way to learn it yourself. If you're a musician that can learn by sound, if you're a musician that learns how to read, you may be able to take those stems, put them into one of those programs that takes audio and turns it into score. And, I know there's like Auto Score and some of those other programs that do that. So, I mean, it's a little bit more roundabout of a way. You'll have to do some of the work yourself, but that might be an option if you're dedicated to learning a song. And I've not worked with any of those audio to MIDI programs. In fact, a friend just asked me to do that with a piece of music and I wasn't able to. So I'm not an expert on that. I'm throwing it out there for you guys. I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube tutorials and things like that. Maybe those companies have tutorials on their website, as most people do these days. So that might be an avenue for those of you who are looking for sheet music or ways to learn the song. That being said, the vocal tracks would be especially interesting with all the harmonies to hear those separated and hear what bleeds into maybe the main music track versus the dialogue track. I don't know. That would be a fun experiment. Maybe I'll have to do that in my free time that I don't have. So, but that's just some options for you. In the meantime, though, let's get back to Wake Up, Set Your Sights, and its two versions. Really cool song, really kind of jazzy and a little bit bluesy. So it's a really good combination of things. Very powerful vocals, of course, and lots of changes in the song. So let's get into it. But of course, I always say let's get into it, but we're not going to get into it because what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Mick Box because it's his song.
Hello there, it's Mick here, and talking about a song called Wake Up, Set Your Sights off our first album, Very Heavy, Very Humble. The song's written by me and David, and I think it kind of sort of harks a bit on the jazzy side from my guitar parts that I wrote, because actually when I first started learning guitar before I became self-taught, I used to go to a guy called Alan Hodgkiss, who used to be the second guitar for Django Reinhardt. So obviously all my teachings were very, very jazz-based. Now the song is about standing up for your rights, and my goodness, that's a recurring theme, isn't it? Throughout life, certainly through my life, it's a recurring theme all the time, and it continues to this day. I have to say, Paul's playing on it is just absolutely superb. Paul Newton's playing is great. He's right in the pocket there. I love it. And David's vocal, well, it's outstanding because it's just so believable. And if I'm perfectly honest, I think this is one of my favourites of the deeper cuts, deeper cut, which I guess is deep in every sense of the word. And it really is one of my favourites, and I really enjoy listening back to it. All the guitar parts and the bits that David and I did together was just stunning. Really enjoyed it. And I hope you do too. So it was a great trip down memory lane, that one. And I've got a warm glow on, and I'm very happy that I had a revisit. Take care, and I hope you enjoy it too. Bye for now.
There is a whole nother component that I hadn't really thought of when I started putting this podcast together, and that would be for Mick to go back and revisit some of the songs that he might not have heard in a while. As an artist myself, I don't really go back to and listen to my work a lot. And my career doesn't quite span anywhere near what Mick's does. So I would imagine that there's a lot of songs that you just kind of forget about over time. Maybe some of those he had revisited when they were putting the 50th anniversary box set together, which if you haven't gotten that, it's an amazing package. Go check that out. But so maybe that's good for him. Mick, I hope you're enjoying that as well. Now we're going to enjoy the song Wake Up, Set Your Sights. This is, we're just going to start with the standard studio version. And then after we're done with that, then I'll just touch on the differences with the alternate version and what I do and I don't like about that, which is interesting because I haven't really said much that I don't like because there hasn't really been much that I don't like. So we're going to get into that and it's going to be fun. So let's just check out the beginning of this awesome song. Okay, there is a lot of stuff going on at the beginning of this song, right? You've got one long stretch of vocal from David Byron. I don't think he took a breath anywhere in there. You've got this great piano guitar build. And if I have this right, there has been some debate on some of the other songs on who played what. But if I have this right, I believe that Colin Wood is playing piano on this one. I believe that this was probably done as Spice, maybe. But I don't believe that Ken Hensley is on this. Then again, he could have overdubbed it. That's kind of been where we're at on at least one or two of the other songs where we're like, I think it was Ken. It might have been Colin. Ken might have overdubbed it. We're not sure. But whatever it is, the performance is phenomenal on the song. So you've got this going on between them. Then you've got this other guitar track that comes in that sounds really, really interesting. And then you've got, the bass and drums playing. Really, the cymbals sound so interesting to me in this part. They're really kind of fuzzy almost, have a little bit of a less crisp and more fuzz sound. So I think that's kind of interesting too. But, on your podcast player, you might have one of those, go back 10 seconds or go back 30 seconds buttons. I would go back and play that intro a couple of times because there's just so much to hear. In fact, just so that you can avoid me talking about it over and over again, I'm going to just replay the intro right now, and then we're just going to carry it into the next part of the song.
Wake up, set your sights. Oh, never shall we fail. Stand up for your rights and justice will prevail.
One thing that I'm not sure I like or not was the, going from the intro into that first verse where you've got the ping on the ride cymbal coming in and then all of a sudden it just stops. That was a little bit weird to me. And I remember even the first time I heard that, I thought that was a little weird because it's just so abrupt. If it kind of decayed a little more or faded out a little more, I think it would have been an easier transition. But maybe that was the point. Maybe they wanted something a little more abrupt. Obviously, if they didn't, they would have changed it. But I always thought that was a little bit awkward of a transition. But the rest of it is just, phenomenal. And you guys are either going to laugh or really get sick of me saying this, but I can give you another Jimi Hendrix reference because, again, Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire, except this time it's with drums that are bringing in the fills between the vocals, where there's no drum beat with fills. It's literally just the fills coming in, which I think is really a cool way to change things up a little bit. And the fills are definitely interesting. They're very well played, and a great job on that, Alex. And let's hear where it goes from here.
Your sights, for the time is right for your role. Yeah, for your role.
So that's kind of what I was talking about with the ride cymbal. Like it for me personally, it works a little bit better as it just kind of carries you into the next section. But like I said, that abrupt stop at the beginning must have been very intentional. Just a different choice, from what I probably would have made as a drummer. But, I'm not in the band, so I can make different choices. It's really interesting, though, the dynamic, how jazzy this song gets while you still have a really powerful vocal over it. And everyone's just kind of, it's not freeform, but it kind of feels like it is, because it's just, everybody's just playing. It's a little bit crazy. It's not so, we can only play in a 4/4 beat until it's time to change into the next thing. And in that last measure, we're going to make our transition. Not the typical kind of songwriting. It really is just kind of a little more flowing, which personally, for a song like this, I really like that. I think it adds a little bit more of a chaos to the story that David is telling, and really works, they really work well together. But very, very powerful performance from David, of course, as always. And, the music is just moving things along very, very nicely. Really unexpected kind of song. But in this particular time, if you're thinking back to 1970-ish, it isn't so far off the mark when you've got a band like King Crimson out there, when you've had some Jimi Hendrix stuff that could get a little bit jazzy, but certainly not something that was incredibly common. But I think that what Heep's doing here is they're refining it a little bit more. They're making it a little bit more clear, where you can kind of hear what everybody's doing. And, Paul Newton's really doing a great job on the bass. Like Mick said, this is probably one of his best songs, I think, for performance, just because there's so much going on. It really gives him a chance to shine without him being in the limelight. Just what he's playing through the verse and the choruses is really interesting. Whereas again, as a very amateur bass player, I would be happy if I nailed the root notes. Paul's obviously much better than I am at this. So let's hear where it goes from here. That's pretty cool. I love that. I love the way that they're sticking together through that, little section with lots of stops and starts and really tight. I really love what, the guitar's playing on there, the way that that's cutting through. This is, this is something that gets really challenging as a musician to remember how many times that goes when it changes up a little bit. At one point, it felt like it slowed down slightly. And, keeping up with all of those things while you're trying to think about what you're supposed to do and what your part is along with that timing. That could be a little bit difficult until you played the song so many times that you don't even want to play it anymore. So great job on this section. I really like that. And I love how it just leads into this next part as well. And that little sound that Mick is making on the guitar, in that opening, the repeat of that opening pattern, just that, that I really love the way that sounds. So very cool part. And I like where it's going from here.
Behind, No screams of mother, are you out of your mind? Though they are shattered, they just don't seem to yield. Bodies are scattered in all parts of the field. Oh no!
You know what, folks? I just realized something, and I'm so glad that I finally figured out what this section of the song reminds me of. It always seemed really familiar to me, and I just couldn't place what was so familiar about it. And if you're going to say it's this song, well, yeah, it's this song, but there's also something else. This part reminds me of a song off of an album by Arthur Brown called The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. And I could actually hear in his deeper kind of, creepier voice, Arthur Brown singing this section because it's very similar to, I think it was a part in a song called The Great Spontaneous Apple Creation. I could be wrong on which song it reminds me of on that album, because that album just to me, I just picture it as one whole song, except for the song Fire. But yeah, that's what it reminds me of. It has that really kind of jazzy feel to it. The vocal delivery is very similar, just not as, the way that Arthur Brown sang that album had a different style to it, almost like a warbly kind of, you're not in the right place kind of sound. Which is really cool. It worked for that album. But yeah, that's what this part reminds me of. Finally, I figured it out. And I actually got to see Arthur Brown played with, who was it? It was Yes and Asia and the Carl Palmer, Emerson, Lake and Palmer Legacy Band. And I think it was John Legend and the Moody Blues. It was a great concert here in Vegas last year. And Arthur Brown actually came and sang with some of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer legacy stuff. And it was so amazing to just see him on stage because he was somebody I never thought I would get to see perform. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting away from the song. But yeah, if you go check out that album, because it's a great album. If you're a fan of this style of music, I think you'll really like it. But I'm not here to talk about Arthur Brown. Am I? No, I'm here to talk about Wake Up, Set Your Sights. So let's get back to the song.
Bodies are scattered in all parts of the field. Oh no! Did I tell you what would happen if you tried? Oh God, stop this killing. Said a young man before he died.
That was just such a beautiful passage of music. Everybody being so patient, playing their part, not overplaying anything, just letting the music and the tones flow together. I kind of imagine this, just thinking in terms of the story of the song. I kind of think about this as just I'm tired of fighting. I need a rest and I need to regroup. And this just being that part where you're just kind of, letting yourself collapse and letting the music just wash over you and rejuvenate you. That's my crazy imagination. We've talked about this on the show before, or I have, and you've listened. But that's just kind of how I pictured this little section of the song, but very beautiful playing. I love when musicians who are playing something that's, especially something that's progressive, when they have a little part that's just so patient, and it really shows the quality of the musicians to not overplay in a section like this, when your adrenaline and everything is all amped up and you're excited about where you're playing, and then you have to slow down and be cautious and be careful. And I really like that. So great job on this section. I think it really adds a whole nother dynamic to the song. And you know what? Arthur Brown wouldn't have done that.
Wake up, set your sights for never shall we stand for and justice will prevail.
I love that buzz roll at the end that Alex Napier is playing. I think that really adds a nice dynamic to the end of the song. And it's not, it's not in your face and overpowering. It's very gentle, really mixed in well with the rest of the music. But wow, such a powerful ending, because you kind of expect with, the song coming in so aggressively, you kind of expect that it's going to pick up again and you're going to have another round of that riff and that jazzy picked up piece, but you don't. It just kind of is like, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep, I'll come back and fight tomorrow, but right now I just need to rest. It's a really unexpected thing. And I think that to me is kind of what makes me want to go back and go, wait, I want more, and go back and listen to the song again. I don't often feel that way. Usually when a song is done, I'm like, okay, yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. What's next? But this one, I kind of feel like with that ending, I'm left a little bit, I know you're not ready to fight, but I am. So I kind of want to go back to that, charged up part at the beginning and hear it again. So great job on this song. I also want to talk about sometimes when you guys hear the clip stop and then you hear it start up again, I've gone back in time a little bit. The reason that I do that is because of the continuity of the song. Sometimes if you hear a part, as it's transitioning, it doesn't really make as much sense. So I kind of want to take a couple of steps back so you can hear how we go into that part, and then you can see that part, how it should be seen or heard, I suppose. And so anyway, if you guys are wondering why I do that, that's why I do that. Now, this episode is a little bit longer than some of our episodes because this song is 6.5 minutes. And then on top of that, we have an alternate version to check out. And I want to talk about the alternate version. I'm going to play you the opening section again of the studio version so that you'll have that fresh in your mind as a comparison. And then I'm going to play the alternate version and see if you can hear the differences.
Wake up!
So right off the bat, you probably notice that there's a completely different sound quality to the alternate version. It's a little bit rougher to my ears. It's a little less polished than the version that they put on the album. But also the other main difference would be the fact that that part where the ride cymbal stops, that passage before the vocals start is gone. This actually just carries right into it. And that's the one thing I didn't like about the original version was that it had that ride cymbal that was really prominent and then just stopped and then had that little passage before the vocals start. This one carries right into it. So I like that. But what I don't like about it is I don't like the fact that they've put a treatment on it to basically what's called brick wall limiting. What brick wall limiting does is it just takes all the signal of the song and raises it to the peak volume so that when you look at the visual waveform, instead of it having, like that, the bumps and hills and valleys that a normal waveform does, it basically looks like a brick. There are, for the opening section, it's a very solid brick. And then, as you drop off all the other instruments and there's just vocals and stuff, it changes. But that brick wall limiting, I'm not a huge fan of it. I've done it before on some of my stuff, and I find that I end up just going back and remixing and mastering those songs. I think the overall sound is a little bit more rough and raw to the alternate version, but there's also things that you could hear a little bit better. So, I think that the vocals stand out a little bit more. I think the leveling of the instruments is a little bit better, but I don't really like the overall sound. And that sound usually comes from that, let's push the signal to the max kind of audio engineering. So it's got its goods and its bads for me, but I actually just prefer the original version. I would probably, if it were me, would just edit out that one little spot, those couple of seconds before the very first vocal line starts. But apart from that, it's a great song, and I'm really glad to share that with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Send me your thoughts. Let's get a conversation going on Twitter. That seems to be about the best place at the moment. Or, you can write into the Facebook group. You can also write me directly, and all those the links there are in the show notes. Everywhere I can be found. And, I just love talking about Uriah Heep. I'm doing a whole podcast on him. So obviously I love the band. And that's it for this episode. We'll see you guys next time. I'm not going to tell you what the song is. I won't do it. And if it's, a couple days from now, you'll just see it on your podcast player anyway. So thanks for joining me for another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one as we're almost done with the album. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!